Hello everyone, FPL Raptor here and welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. In today's video, it is my Game Week 12 preview video. I ask for questions over on Twitter and YouTube community. You give me your dilemmas, things you want me to discuss, and I take them, do all the research I can, produce some nice graphics, and we talk through them in a really long form, detailed format. These are my favorite videos on the channel and I know you guys love them too. So if you are enjoying the content here on this channel, please do remember to like, comment, and subscribe. I'm probably going to be annoying in the run up to Christmas because I would love to hit 10,000 subscribers by the start of 2022. We're just approaching 8,000 now, so we've still got another 2,000 to go. So it might be slightly optimistic, but if you are watching this and you haven't subscribed and you like the content, please do subscribe. And if you've already subscribed, tell your friends about this channel, tell anyone that you think might be interested, and let's try and hit 10,000 together. So without further ado, let's get into today's video. Before we begin today, just going to have a bit of a chat about the sponsors of these videos, OneFootball. Now, let me tell you, in the run-up to Christmas, you are going to need OneFootball. There are so many games to come. I think we've got something crazy like 10 game weeks in the space of 40 days over the coming next month and a half or so. You are going to need to be able to track those games when the games are coming, injury news, press conference updates, transfer rumours over the January period as well. So you might as well get OneFootball downloaded now so that you can keep up to date with everything. If you would like to download OneFootball, it is completely free and you have everything you need and more. You've got the QR code in the top left corner of the screen and you've also got a link in the description. If you scan that code or click the link in the description, you're not only getting the app, but you're also supporting the channel as well. So it's a win-win situation. Download OneFootball for free and let me know what you think if you do download it. Now, week by week, there are often very, very popular questions which dominate. I don't think I've ever seen so many questions around one topic. And this topic is, who should I bench between this person and this person? I've got 4 players, Ross. I need to bench 2 of them. Who should I bench? And what I wanted to do and what I started doing was making a list and like almost ordering them from the players that I would definitely start to the players that I would definitely bench. And I was going for like 20 minutes and then I just kept coming up with players. I was basically listing every player in the game because I was being asked about so many. Even the likes of players that you wouldn't really normally bench, like Tony and Mbomo and Gallagher and Saka. And the list was just ongoing and ongoing. So what I thought I would do is I would just talk you through my logic of how to decide who I should bench. And that's sort of a popular theme, not only within my channel, but within my book, in that I think the best way to give someone advice, and that's what we do here on this channel, is not just to tell you who to bench week by week, but to try and improve the way you make decisions. So these are the things that I'm thinking about when I'm choosing who to bench. And I want to start by saying a massive caveat is that we don't know. There's not a great answer, but no one knows who is going to score the most points that week, and it's often very random. I did not expect Foster to get 11 points against Arsenal and Norman to get 9 points against Brentford in Game Week 11. I obviously didn't expect that. So sometimes these random things happen. So at the end of the day, no one knows, and if anyone tries to tell you that you can't bench that player, it's obvious you can't bench that player, then they're lying. They're not sure. So I just want to caveat by saying that at the start. But here are some things that I think about. The first thing that I really, really like to do, and it really helps me sometimes, is I like to predict the results. Take FPL out of the equation, go through the list of fixtures, get up the FPL website, go through the list of fixtures, and predict the games. And not only predict the result, so you might say this week you expect Man City to win 3-0. Predict the game state as well. Do you think it's going to be a counter-attacking game? Do you expect City to hold more of the ball? Do you expect Everton to get some chances? If so, maybe Edison will make some saves and take some bonus off of Diaz. Are you expecting them to get chances? And if so, maybe they could potentially score. Are you expecting City to completely dominate? All of these things will change what you expect to happen. And once you can have a real thorough prediction, again, not just the result, but the actual way the game will be played. Once you do that for all of the fixtures, you can then look at your players and think, based on that, what do I think will happen? Because, as an example, I really wanted to play Emerson Royale this week. I've got him on my bench. And I've been really want to play him. And then I thought, I expect Leeds to score. The only reason I want to play him is because I think he's got quite a bit of attacking threat and he's in my team. But if someone was to ask me, do you think Leeds will score? I would say, well, yeah, I do, because I just think Spurs have got some injuries and they haven't looked that great at the back. Even with Conte, I still think they're a little bit weak at the back, in which case I probably shouldn't play him then. So it almost allows you to take your mind away from FPL, away from your team. It doesn't remove the bias as such, but it definitely dampens your cognitive biases. And as such, it allows you to make a better, more informed decision. So that's the first thing. Go through and predict the results, and that will help. The second thing that I do, and this is just an opinion, is I always favour the attacker. Apart from in 2 occasions. But for like 95% of the time, I will favour the attacker over the defender. The only 2 times that I will play a defender over an attacker is A, when the fixtures are horrible for the attacker. So this week, for example, Saka against Liverpool. Or second, the defender has really high attacking threat. such as a Cancelo, James, Trent, Chilwell. I would never bench them over an attacker because they almost have the attacking threat of the attacker. So I would always favour the attacker if you're going to ask me who you think you should bench. However, if the fixture is really bad for the attacker or the defender has really high attacking threat, I may favour the defender. What I'm just going to quickly show you is my team for this week. So you can see my benching decision and how I've come to make that decision. So I haven't made any transfers. I've still got 2 free transfers, 2.2 million in the bank. I haven't decided on captaincy. But for me, I need to start one of Livramento, Emerson, and Saka. So based on the stuff that I've just told you, I've gone through and predicted the results. I predicted a Southampton clean sheet, hence wanting to play Livramento. Saka's got a really, really tough fixture and his underlying data isn't that good. So I actually predicted 3-1 for Liverpool Arsenal. I do think that there's a reasonable chance that Arsenal will grab a goal. But when I consider, I'd be more certain on Southampton keeping a clean sheet than Arsenal scoring. And even with Arsenal scoring, I'm not convinced it would be Saka. It's much more likely to be Smith Rowe and Aubameyang, who are in fine form at the moment, or it could just be like a defender from a corner. I would want to be sure that that team will score sort of 2 or 3 goals to want to play them. And I just can't see Saka scoring against Liverpool, even if Arsenal do grab a goal. And as I said, I predicted Tottenham 2-1 is the prediction that I came up with for that. So I expect Emerson to concede, and therefore I don't really want to play him. So putting all that together, I've decided to go for Livramento because I think he'll get a clean sheet. He's got decent enough underlying data, and I think Tottenham will concede, and I think even if Arsenal score, I'm not convinced Saka will be the one to grab it. So you can see there sort of the thought process behind my benching decision. That's what I would do. I obviously don't have to decide between like Rafinha, Diaz, etc., which I will discuss in 2 seconds. But for me, that is the logic behind my benching decision. So back to this. The third thing is don't look at ownership unless that is the way you want to play. And I've put unless that is the way you want to play in brackets because I don't think anyone should ever tell you the way to play FPL. If you want to play it based on your cash leagues and winning, that's fine. If you want to play it just for fun, that's fine. If you want to just win your family mini league, that's okay as well. So play the way you want to. But I think the optimal way to play FPL is to ignore ownership because at the end of the day, you should be picking the players that you think will score the most points. I know people fall into the trap of, well, I'll just play the player with the highest ownership because then that won't hurt me as much. I understand that, and that might be a sensible way to do it, but really, you should be picking the player that you think will score the most points, right? At least that's the way I would play it anyway. But you know me, I'm not easily swayed by other people, and maybe that's just my play style. The fourth is just trust your gut feeling, right? Just trust your gut feeling. What I said at the start is we just don't know who is going to score the most out of the players on the bench. It's almost impossible to really accurately predict who will score the points. I think Livramento might keep a clean sheet. It might bounce off Livramento's face and hit the back of the net and he's got an own goal. Then he might pick up a yellow card. Anything can happen in football. What trusting your gut feeling does is it makes you resent the decision less. If I pick Livramento because I think Livramento will keep a clean sheet and he doesn't, might be a bit annoying, but I accept it. I own that decision. If I played Saka now because I read a thread or watched Raptor's video where he said Saka's going to score, and I did that, and then Livramento kept a clean sheet, and then Saka didn't score, I would say, why on earth did I trust someone else? I knew I should have trusted my gut feeling. If you trust your gut feeling, you're much less likely to resent the decision and you're less likely to resent other people for trying to help you there. And that sort of leads on to, I've put like miscellaneous. This isn't really a fantastic piece of advice. It's not very scientific and I don't think it's necessarily the way to play it. But sometimes you just think, what would annoy you more? And it sort of links to what I just said. Don't bench someone that you're going to beat yourself up if they haul. And Livramento really is one of those players for me because I just think Norwich is the fixture you want to play him. He's a great bench player, but if you're going to play him 1 week, it has to be this week. And I just look at that and I just think it would really annoy me to see another haul from Livramento on my bench. So sometimes that helps as well. And it sort of links to the gut feeling. The reason for that annoyance is because my gut feeling is telling me to play him. So there's some things that I'm thinking about. The most common question I had was, would you play Livramento, Diaz, and Rafinha? They seem to be the 3 that people are really, really struggling with. I'll be honest, I think Diaz and Livramento, for me, I'd really struggle with that because I think the clean sheet is more likely for Diaz, but I think Livramento has the highest attacking potential. So I think I would play Livramento because I think a clean sheet is fairly likely for both. I think Diaz's ceiling, unless he gets a very rare goal, Diaz's ceiling, because I expect Man City to score a few as well, and because Cancelo's a bonus point magnet, I think Diaz's ceiling is maybe 6, 7, maybe 8 points. Very rarely will it be 9. Livramento's ceiling is significantly higher. So for me, I think I would just about favour Livramento over Diaz, but I would play Rafinha over both of them. I think Rafinha has really good underlying stats. I think the game will suit Rafinha. I think he'll get chances, and I just think that I quite fancy Rafinha in this game. There's not that much science behind it. The data's not necessarily supporting that massively. I reckon the percentage chance of Diaz keeping a clean sheet is higher than the percentage chance of Rafinha scoring. But like I said, I prefer to favour the attacker unless the fixture's horrible, which I don't think it is for Rafinha, and unless the defender has really high attacking threat. And I'm not sure either Diaz or Livramento have high enough attacking threat to want to favour them over Rafinha. Just my opinion. Like I said, I wouldn't listen to me. I would ignore everything I just said and trust your gut feeling, because you're much less likely to resent your decision. And if you play Rafinha now and he blanks and the other two keep clean sheets, you're going to resent me, and I don't want that at all. So there's some of the things I'm thinking about. Let me know down below. If you have any benching decisions, I can try and help you in the comments. But like I said, just own your decision. Trust your gut feeling. Sometimes it'll work out, sometimes it won't. Unfortunately, that's part of FPL, especially when you have a strong bench. I think because a lot of people this week are trying to fit in the likes of Son, Jota, Kane, etc. A lot of the questions were around budget defenders. I think a lot of us have quite a lot of money invested in our defence. A lot of us have 4 premium defenders, as I did last week, and I even downgraded last week Diaz to Emerson Royale because I saw that as a potential way to get more money in my attack. So I know a lot of people are looking at downgrading to budget defenders. So what I thought I'd do is I'd do a direct comparison between, I think I've got 8 here, 8 budget defenders under the price of 4.5 million and below. Obviously, this doesn't take into account the likes of Emerson, Reguilon, Cucurella, a lot of those like £5 million defenders. So I might have to do that in another video. But I thought for this, a lot of people, if they're taking money out of the defense, they're probably gonna want to go all the way down to a cheaper defender. So I've listed 8 here. Some of these 8 I've put in because I think they're fantastic, and some of them I've just seen have been transferred in by a few managers, or I know will be popular picks. So I hope in this way that I've covered most bases with this. But if there are any other budget defenders you want me to talk about, let me know down in the comments and I can let you know a couple of their stats or something like that as well. So the 8 that I've chosen is Johnson, Duffy, White, Lamptey, Lowton, Mitchell. I'm going to call him Gehi, Mark Gehi, and Livramento as well. So those 8. What I've got for each of those 8 defenders is I've got 3 individual underlying stats in non-penalty expected goal involvement per 90, touches in the box per 90, bonus baseline points per 90, baseline bonus points per 90, apologies. And then I've got 3 underlying statistics for the defence they play for. So, for example, for Johnson, these are West Ham's underlying defensive numbers. So I've got expected goals conceded per 90, shots conceded per 90, and shots in the box conceded per 90. And then the final column that you can see is the fixture difficulty over the next 10 fixtures from a defensive perspective. So on the Fantasy Football Fix website, you can sort by either defensive difficulty or offensive difficulty. So this is based on the underlying data of the opposition attacks that they're facing. So for example, if West Ham were facing Manchester City, that would be a very difficult fixture because Manchester City have really good underlying data from an attacking perspective. So hopefully that's clear what you're looking at on the screen. And then as always, the bright green boxes means it is the best stat of the bunch there. The slightly faded green is second, the very faded green is sort of third, fourth, and then white means they are not in the top sort of 3 or 4 here. So if we start by looking at the underlying data from an attacking perspective of these players individually, you can see non-penalty expected goals and expected assists per 90. Matty Lowton of Burnley actually comes out on top. Really, really nice amount of creativity this season, but also a little bit of attacking goal threat as well. He comes out at 0.16 per 90, which is really, really impressive for him. So whilst Burnley haven't been that great defensively, as we'll discuss in a second, Lowton looks really, really good going forward, and he's definitely the best in this list. However, Livramento is only 0.01 lower than Lowton, which shows that Livramento might still be the guy to own. So if you don't own Livramento, obviously, as well as him having pretty high ownership, this looks pretty promising as well. Lamptey has 0.11. My issue with these stats for Lamptey is, number one, he's played very, very limited minutes, so it's a really small sample size. And the second is he's brought on as a sub when a lot of people are tired, and he's been brought on in an attacking position in a few of the games as well. So I take Lamptey's stats with a pinch of salt, but we do know that Lamptey has pretty decent underlying threat, and this sort of supports that as well. Ben White's actually fourth, but 0.09 isn't great. And then the rest of the guys here have got very, very low attacking threat. Touches in the box per 90. Lamptey is by far and away the highest, 7.73. But a lot of those are sort of late on in the game. He's chucked on as an attacking threat, and I don't expect those numbers to continue when he's playing right wing back. However, he does definitely, I would say, play probably the most advanced role out of any of these players here. So when he is on the pitch, he is still going to be getting involved quite a lot. Livramento and Duffy are probably the 2 after that, the 2 budget defenders that we've known for a while. Duffy's fantastic from corners, and Livramento gets forward quite a lot, especially considering he's playing right back rather than like a really attacking right wing back. So Nothing really that surprising there. I would say that the likes of Gehi, Mitchell, Lowton, White, and Johnson, I would want more touches in the box per 90 than that. If you think someone like Reece James gets sort of 5 or 6 touches in the box per 90, you can see here, of course, they're significantly cheaper, but you would want it to sort of be around 2 or 3. That would be really, really great for a budget defender. If we look at baseline bonus points, Duffy is an absolute monster, but we've known that for a while. He's often picking up a lot of bonus points. Outside of that, Mark Gehi is coming up quite a lot. The Crystal Palace centre-back. Apologies if I am butchering that name. But he's really, really good. And I know Late Riser mentioned this quite recently because he was deciding between sort of Mitchell and Gehi as well, looking at those Crystal Palace defenders. And he is a real bonus point monster. If you compare that to Mitchell, Mitchell is only getting 4.64 baseline bonus points per 90, which is really, really poor, really low. So that's definitely worth looking at. Ben White's pretty decent as well. Johnson and Lowton, relatively good as well. And then Livramento's actually relatively low. But of course, if he gets an attacking return of some kind and a clean sheet, he's quite likely to pick up bonus at that point. So I would potentially be looking at the Crystal Palace centre-back there because the other data's not terrible. It's sort of comparable to like Mitchell, Johnson and White. However, the baseline bonus points is really high. So that means if he does keep a clean sheet, he might get sort of those 6, 7, 8 pointers, which is really, really nice. Sorry, 7, 8 or 9 pointers. So based on that, I would say that the standout probably is going to be Lamptey, although I'd want to see more data to support that. Livramento still looks good. Lowton looks very, very decent. And Mark Gehi as well. If we're taking a look at the underlying data of the defences, what you can see is you can see the number and then in brackets that position in the Premier League. So for example, Johnson's 1.11 expected goals conceded per 90. That is 6th best in the league. West Ham are 6th best in the league for expected goals conceded per 90. So as you can see, Crystal Palace are the best defence. They are the 3rd best defence in the league this season for expected goals conceded per 90, despite having arguably the toughest fixtures in the league, definitely in the top 5 for toughest fixtures in the league. And they've got nice fixtures coming up. So they are so good defensively this year. I would really, really be looking at a Crystal Palace defender based on that. If we take a look at sort of after that, you can see West Ham have been pretty good at 6th, and then you've got Brighton in at 9th. Outside that, Southampton have beaten sort of mid-table. And then you've got Arsenal sort of pushing 13th best defence in the league based on expected goals conceded. And then Burnley are 15th. So whilst Lowton's underlying data from an attacking perspective looks all right, you'd want to see a real improvement in Burnley's underlying defensive data. Shots conceded in the box and just shots conceded in general. You can see once again, Crystal Palace ranking really well. They're the 5th best in the league for shots conceded and 6th best in the league for shots in the box conceded. Outside of that, I would say that Brighton and Southampton are probably the 2 most impressive defences, which sort of confirms what we saw in the expected goals conceded. And then West Ham are around mid-table for the amount of shots they concede. So what I would say based on the underlying defensive data, without going into too much detail, is Crystal Palace are definitely the best defence for budget defenders for me. I would definitely be looking at Mitchell and Gehi. And outside of that, Brighton are pretty decent. West Ham aren't bad, and neither are Southampton. Arsenal and Burnley definitely don't look like the 2 to be targeting from a defensive perspective, at least for clean sheets moving forward. If we look at the fixture difficulty rating, it's very interesting because if you look from an attacking perspective over the next 10 game weeks, West Ham have the 14th best fixtures. If you look from a defensive perspective, they have the 3rd best fixtures. So they're pretty good from a defensive perspective, but maybe not great for the likes of Antonio and Benrahma over the next 10. But it means that if you were to want to go for someone like Johnson, it could be a great option. My main issue with Johnson is I just don't expect him to keep Sofal out over the busy Christmas period. I think there'll be, at the very least, a lot of rotation. So for me, despite him being forming in and despite him playing for a good defence with good underlying data, I just wouldn't really be looking there. So outside of that, the 4th best fixtures in the league from a defensive perspective over the next 10 is for Crystal Palace. So you've got decent underlying data for Gehi, you've got great defensive data, and you've got really good fixtures coming up. So for me, the standout here in this list is Mark Gehi, the centre-back for Crystal Palace, which might be a slight differential. Maybe you've seen him already. I don't mind Mitchell, but I'm just not seeing enough from him. As well as the really low baseline bonus, I would probably just go for the centre-back myself. Livramento's fixtures are still pretty decent coming up. 8th best in the league for Southampton from a defensive perspective. So I suppose I would probably still go for Livramento just because his underlying data is, from an expected goals and expected assist point of view, is better than the centre-back. But I do also like the Crystal Palace one. So for me, Mark Gehi or Tino Livramento would be the 2 I would go for. Outside of that, I still think Lamptey will be a fantastic choice. I'd maybe just want to see a little bit more fitness under his belt, and I'd want to see what his underlying data looks like when he's playing at right wing back, starting the games on a more regular basis. Let me know down below, do you fancy any of these budget defenders, and if so, which one? Have I missed anyone out? And if so, let me know down below, and maybe I'll pin the comment if there's a really, really good recommendation. So I did cover this in my game week watch list video. I think I even covered it in my early thoughts a little bit. The decision between Son and Jota. I'll try and make this as brief as possible for Raptor. I just thought I would give you my current viewpoint on it. I've already talked about it a lot on this channel. Heung-min Son, in my opinion, does definitely have the better fixtures, even though people are saying that Leeds might not be the easiest fixture. Brentford have been solid defensively at points. Brighton and Leicester aren't fantastic. I still think as a 6 set of fixtures up to game week 17, I do prefer Spurs fixtures definitely to Liverpool's. So from a fixtures perspective, I prefer Son. However, as we've said on multiple occasions, Diogo Jota's underlying stats are unbelievable. They are so, so good. If you just take a glance at them, non-penalty expected goals and expected assists per 90 for Jota is 0.81. It's almost double Son's at 0.44. Big chances. He's almost getting a big chance every 90 minutes. Touches in the box isn't that impressive, but still better than Son. The only thing that Son does better than Jota on is the amount of minutes he's played this season. But with Roberto Firmino likely out until mid-December at the earliest, and then with the AFCON coming up where we'll see Salah and Mane go away with their respective nations, Jota could be essentially nailed until like February time. So minutes don't really come into account here as much for me. I still think he's prone to an early sub with the likes of Origi and Oxlade-Chamberlain and Minamino potentially coming on, but he should be getting the majority of minutes. So the sensible, logical decision, my job as content creator is to advise you the most sensible decision to make. And for me, if you're choosing between the two, you should be bringing in Diogo Jota. From a logic point of view, from an underlying data, even the fixtures, Arsenal, Southampton, Everton's not a red fixture at the moment by any means. Wolves, Villa, Newcastle, they're not bad fixtures for Liverpool by any means. I think the sensible decision is Diogo Jota. So if you're asking for my content creator decision, go for him. My issue is that I'm a little bit of a gut feeling manager. And I'm a manager that likes to try and target players before they start performing. And I know that sounds like a strange thing to say. I discussed it on the BBC Radio 5 live podcast that I did a couple of days ago. So go check that out if you haven't, with Chris Sutton and Ali and Statman Dave. It was really, really enjoyable. But I discussed that part of my management is trying to jump on a player before there is evidence that they're going to do well. Because that's how you do well in FPL. You can't wait for every player to score 5, 6, 7 goals in a row and then go, right, now they've scored 7 goals in 5 games, I'm going to bring them in. Because those runs don't continue forever. So I almost like the fact that Son hasn't done anything yet. I like that. I think that it might be a good opportunity to anticipate that something's coming. And I've just got this gut feeling that Son's going to do fantastically over the next 4 weeks. But it's not really supported by the data. And therefore, I can't really advise that you do that. So that's about as much as I'm going to go into the detail, because I've discussed it so much on this channel this week. And I know a lot of you guys watch every minute, and I don't want to repeat content. For me, I'm currently just about favouring Diogo Jota, because at the end of the day, data, logic, sensible decision-making normally is better than gut feeling. But like I said, I'm a bit of a gut feeling manager, and I really fancy Son over the next 4 to 6 weeks. Let me know down below, have you already moved to one of these guys? If so, who? And if not, who do you think we should be targeting? I'd love to know your opinion on it. This is such a tricky question that I keep being asked, and I've really tried to give this so much thought. And it's even trickier because I don't own Vardy. But the question is, do we keep faith with Vardy, or do we sell him this week for Kane, or potentially downgrade to like a Tony or an Armstrong to be able to get Son in? Basically, do we hold Vardy or do we sell him? I'll be honest, I was discussing this on Twitter with a few people earlier. There is no right answer to this question. Anyone that tells you, again, as I say with a lot of things, anyone that can categorically tell you something is the right thing to do isn't someone that I would take advice from, because FPL is a game of fine margins. We're trying to predict the future, which is impossible. And Vardy in particular is just one of those. He's almost like a stat buster, and he's very unpredictable. When his stats are good, sometimes he'll blank. When he blanks, his stats, when he starts hauling, sometimes his stats are really terrible. He's almost impossible to predict. And I think really all this comes down to is, what is your management style? I think I've presented the stats on screen. We're going to discuss them, but I think it comes down to, what sort of manager are you? Are you a patient manager? Are you a stats-based manager? Are you a fixtures-based manager? Play to your own strengths. For me this season, I've realised that in everyday life and everything I do, I'm a really patient, sort of calm person. I don't normally get very flustered. Nothing really flusters me in everyday life. I'm not a particularly emotional person. And I realised I should be playing FPL that way, because I haven't played like that in the past. I've been very knee-jerky and aggressive and taken risks, and that's just not my style. And I think it was in the process of writing my book about risk-taking and playing to your own management strengths, I realised that I wasn't doing that, and I've started to this season. And it's worked really well for me. So if you're asking me, would I keep Jamie Vardy? Yes, I would keep Jamie Vardy. I don't necessarily think that's the right or wrong decision. You can play it a number of ways. But I would be looking at it as, I'm not convinced enough by Kane. even though I own Kane, I'm not convinced by Kane. I'm not sure that I would want to take out another striker for Kane particularly, unless it was a free transfer and I really fancied Kane and I was going to captain him. By all means, go for it. But Spurs haven't done enough to, I don't think, to convince to take out a striker that is in really great form this season. Yes, he's been struggling over the last 3 or 4 games, but in general, he's a great goal scorer. He's on penalties, and the fixtures coming up are fantastic. If I was to say to you, and I know this does change it, but if I was to say to you that instead of the way the fixtures look now, just switch Watford and Chelsea for me. Just switch those two around and say Leicester played Watford in game week 12 and Chelsea in game week 13. Still take the fixtures as a 6. Would you sell Vardy? You would not. I think it's almost the fact that this fixture looks so good this week for Spurs and the fixture looks so terrible for Leicester that we almost want to make that switch from Vardy to Kane to get that immediate gratification. But I wonder if you can delay that gratification and decide to just suck it up this week that you're not going to own Kane and that you're going to own Vardy against Chelsea. I think that might be a sensible decision because Watford, Southampton, Villa, Newcastle, those 4 aren't much worse than the Leeds, Burnley, Brentford and Norwich fixtures for Spurs. I would argue that actually those 4 are almost better. The Watford and Newcastle fixtures are really nice. Villa haven't looked that great, even though that Gerrard might be able to turn that around. So it's really tough. But I would say just so that you know, from my personal perspective, I'd be tempted to hold him. However, looking at the stats, they really aren't that great. He is struggling a little bit this season. 4.90 expected FPL points per 90 is okay. 0.45 expected goal involvement per 90, again, really isn't great for a £10.7 million striker. But once again, Harry Kane's aren't much better at all. So if you're moving from Vardy to Kane, you're not doing it for the underlying statistics. Big chances is actually decent enough. He's still getting 0.67 big chances per 90, which means he'll get one less than every 2 games, which is really nice. And normally he will take those. And touches in the box isn't bad at 5.19 either. So the underlying data is not terrible, but once again, it definitely doesn't warrant having a £10.7 million player. But like I said, Son and Kane's data isn't great either. Even though that Conte might change that, at the moment, there's nothing to support making that move. I'll try and remember to flash it up on the screen, but there was a really interesting stat that I came across. I was trying to look at how involved Vardy's been this season. There are 255 midfielders and forwards that have featured this season in total. 255 players that have been on the pitch. Vardy is 255th, i.e. he is last for touches per 90 on the pitch. It's around 21 touches per 90. So even those guys that have only featured for a few minutes or only 90 minutes or some that have featured for the full 990, whatever it's been, he has taken the least touches per 90. And that sort of shows what a frustrating owney can be. But that isn't new. Last season, he was 4th bottom. So it's not a new thing for Jamie Vardy. He just doesn't get very involved. In fact, he has so little involvement that you can see most of his touches this season have come from taking kickoffs. So I understand it's very frustrating to own a Vardy, especially if you're someone that watches games, because you watch him and he doesn't do anything. But you don't need him to do anything because that's not who he is. He's a goal scorer. You just need him to take one touch in the box and he'll score it. So I wouldn't necessarily be put off by that, but it's for me why I struggle to own Vardy, because I like to watch the games and I like to be excited by my players. And the stats are never outrageous for Vardy because he's such a clinical finisher and he doesn't get that many chances. But when he does, he takes them. And so a combination of he doesn't ever look that great when you watch him, his stats aren't ever that amazing. It means that I do struggle to own him, and that's why I haven't owned him yet this season. I don't think I owned him at all. Oh, I did for one period when Iheanacho started scoring hat-tricks left, right and centre. I owned Vardy then. I just struggle with him. That being said, if I owned him, I do think I would keep him because I think that Watford, Southampton, Villa, Newcastle run of 4 is really, really nicely set up for him. It looks like Leicester are switching back to a 1-up-top formation, which suits Vardy more than the 2-up-top formations. Harvey Barnes and Vardy link up really nicely. So there is no right or wrong answer here. If you've sold him already, absolutely fine with that. I think Kane could do really well over the next few weeks, which is why I own him. If you want to be patient, don't let anyone tell you that you need to sell him. I think he could do really, really well over the next 6 game weeks. He could quite easily score against Chelsea. We know he likes these big occasions. It's a tricky one. Again, as always, I always ask for your comments because I'm so interested in knowing what you guys think. I like having a bit of a chat about it. So let me know. Have you already sold Vardy? Do you not own Vardy at all? And if you do own him and you haven't decided yet, what are you leaning towards? I think it could go either way. So this wasn't actually a question, which is one of the first times I've done it, but it was just something that I just wanted to draw your attention to. I don't want you to overreact to this before I even tell you what the thing that I've noticed and the thing that other people in the community have noticed. I don't want you to overreact to it, but I just want to make you aware of it because sometimes it will soften the blow if it does happen. And it also explains, I've got a few questions because I said I was considering Foden this week and then I've just sort of gone off him. And I had a few questions around that in my team selection video. The reason is I think it might be time for Pep Roulette Obviously, across the busy period, he's going to have to rotate his squad. But I think Everton in particular is definitely a fixture I could see him rotating in. And this isn't just my point of view. If you follow Luke from Fantasy Football Scout on Twitter, absolutely great account to follow, really maverick with his decision making, very entertaining to follow. He does a really great job of predicting the City lineups. And he's been trying to drive home the point that Pep isn't rotating this season. And he's got a very favoured 11. I mean, we could list it quite easily. It's the players that play every week, even though it's a Cancelo and Foden playing every single minute in the Premier League pretty much. He's not rotating much at all. Gabriel Jesus is pretty much locked down that right wing position. But even himself, who's trying to drive that home, he said that Everton is the fixture that he can see some rotation in. The reason for that, I've just shown you sort of their next 4 fixtures, is you can see they've got Man City on Wednesday. They've got PSG, on Wednesday. So that's only Monday, Tuesday they've got rest for because the game's on Sunday against Everton. And then they've got a 3-day rest of Thursday, Friday, Saturday before they then play West Ham, which is a very tricky fixture. And then a couple of days after that, they've only got Monday, Tuesday again, then they've got Villa. And if Villa bounce back with the new manager, with Gerrard, that could be a tricky fixture as well. And a lot of their players have been playing a lot of minutes in the international break. Foden's one player in particular that's been playing quite a few minutes, but a lot of them as well. So I just think Pep might, and it's a might, and I don't want to scare you I wouldn't bench your City players by any means. He might rotate in this Everton game because I think he'll see the PSG and West Ham games in particular as games that he needs to have his strongest 11 out there. And yes, he could play strongest 11 against PSG and West Ham, and then bench those against Villa. But 3 games in the space of exactly a week after a busy international break might be a bit much for me. So I'm not necessarily saying he's going to put out a B team against Everton, but I do think the likes of Cancelo and Foden could potentially be rested. And that's just put me off slightly moving now on Foden. I think I might give it the Everton game and the West Ham game. If he doesn't start the West Ham game, I might move from him against Villa. If he does, I might then skip the Villa game and then do it the game after that. So for me, I do really want Foden. His underlying data is really good. And I still think he is pretty much nailed in that City team, because he is in Pep's favoured 11. I'm just not sure that I want to be bringing him in before Everton. The other reason I say this is just make sure you've got your benches sorted. Cancelo in particular is unlikely to come on if he's benched. I think even Foden, I just think if he's going to bench Foden, he'll probably try and stick with the players on the pitch. He doesn't actually make that many subs at the moment, Pep. Even last season, he didn't make that many. He'd often stick with the same sort of 11 and make 1 or 2 subs. So just make sure you've got your bench in an order that you're happy with. And maybe if you're trying to decide between Foden and Jota, I'm not sure if I want to advise this because this is such a good fixture if Foden starts, but I'm just not sure. I'm just not sure that I would want to bring in Foden this week. And as such, I might prioritise Jota and bring in Foden at a later date, or prioritise Son and bring in Foden at a later date. Let me know down below. Maybe I'm overthinking this. Maybe the whole community are overthinking this. I just think with this busy period coming up, I think Pep will try and identify times where he can rest a couple of his key players, such as De Bruyne, Bernardo Silva, Foden, Cancelo, etc. And I think this might be the fixture to do it, especially as Everton haven't looked that great at the moment. But yeah, let me know down below. Maybe we're overthinking it. So just to finish off with some other questions I was asked, as I said, I want to answer every one of your questions, as I always try and do in the comments, but I can't cover all of that in a video. So just a few quick fire comments on some of the other questions. The first is, what should we do with our Brentford players? I'd be keeping them this week. I did discuss on Twitter that if I take out Tony this week, I can get both Son and Jota as part of a -4. It was more just to spark some discussion and almost to put myself off, because I just don't think that's wise. Yes, Brentford haven't looked that great. Yes, Tony's stats are poor. Yes, Mbomo just hits the post or doesn't touch the ball. Every time he touches it, he seems to hit the post. But I still just look at that fixture and think, I do want to hold him for this week. After that, I definitely wouldn't be looking at wanting a double up. I just don't think Brentford have been great enough over the last few weeks. I don't think Tony's underlying stats are anywhere near good enough to hold him. And I do think that the likes of Smith Rowe and Gallagher might be better owned than Mbomo at the moment. So, yes, I do think we should be looking to sell soon. I'm not sure I would do it this week unless you desperately need to sell them to bring in a player you desperately want. I would give them the Newcastle game. I think it's a fantastic fixture. The second question is, should I sell Sanchez if I have no playing keeper? If so, for who? My very strong opinion on this, and I don't normally have a strong opinion, is you should only sell Sanchez if you wanted to sell him anyway. So ignore the red card. Were you thinking, I really want to sell Sanchez? Had Sanchez been on your mind as, I really don't want him, I want someone else? If it hadn't been on your mind, I just don't think it's worth it. It's such a low expected value transfer. What are you gaining from bringing in a playing keeper this week? A maximum of 6 points. because Sanchez would get 0. Your keeper will probably get 6. It's very difficult to try and predict when a keeper's going to get like 10 points. And also, I like to think, even if it's a free transfer, I like to think of every transfer as costing me 4 points, because it does. That is what a transfer costs, even if it's free. So really, you're gaining 2 points if they keep a clean sheet. I don't think it's a very high. I would much rather take out someone like Saka for Jota. That's a much more sort of, you're chasing some sort of upside there, because Jota could score a brace, he could score 3. In that case, you've got a much, much bigger, higher ceiling, a much broader range between what your baseline player would get and your new player would get. So for me, I would only be looking to sell Sanchez if you wanted to anyway, because if you wanted to sell him anyway, this is a great excuse to do so. Right? That's my opinion on it. If you was looking to anyway, you've got a free transfer, that's cool. I wouldn't do it for a hit under any circumstance. I just don't think that's worth it, again, because then it literally is worth 4 points, rather than sort of like theoretically being worth 4 points to transfer. It literally is costing you 4 points. You are taking 4 points off your total to bring in a keeper that's likely to get no more than 6 points. So for me, that is a no. If so, for who? So if you were looking to sell him anyway and you'd like to sell him, I'd probably be going for Gaeta. We've spoken about Crystal Palace's defence earlier in the video. He's looking really, really solid this season. I would probably go for Gaeta at the moment. Outside of that, I think Ramsdale is probably the second best option. But Arsenal's fixtures aren't great over the next sort of 6 to 10 game weeks. And underlying data-wise, Crystal Palace are stronger. So you're going for a stronger defence with better fixtures in Gaeta. But I do still really like Ramsdale, and I'm still more than happy to have Ramsdale myself. I think the third best keeper is probably Sanchez. So there you go. That's my opinion on it. I'd go for Gaeta, then Ramsdale. But if you weren't looking to sell Sanchez before the red card, I certainly wouldn't be looking to sell him now. Third question was, is it time for Simicast 2.0? Now, at the time of recording this, I'm hoping there's not an update between when I've looked and now. It looks like Robertson is fighting to be fit for this weekend, which tells me he's probably going to be out for like 2 or 3 weeks maximum. He might be back straight away. So unless there is confirmation that Robertson is out until, and I would say at the minimum, mid-December, similar to Firmino, I would not be going Simicast. I would definitely prefer Jota, because we know that Firmino's got a pretty serious injury. And even when Firmino is fit, Jota still gets quite a few minutes, whereas Simicast is completely reliant on Robertson not being fit. So for me, no, it's not time for Simicast 2.0 unless I can get confirmation that Robertson's out for like 6 to 8 weeks, or 4 to 6 weeks minimum, which I just don't think we're going to get. So for me, that's a no. I would much rather go for Jota. The fourth question is, have I missed the boat with Reece James? I know a lot of people want Son, Jota, Kane, etc. this week, but they also feel like they need to get James in. I discussed him in my early thoughts video earlier in the week, which I'll try and remember to link at the end of the video. You have not missed the boat with Reece James. He has fantastic underlying data. The fixtures aren't great for Chelsea, but they're pretty decent still until around game week 20. Even with the busy period, I still think he'll play 80-90% of minutes. So for me, no, you haven't missed the boat on Reece James, but equally, I wouldn't mind if you prioritised Son, Kane or Jota this week, but I would still be looking to get Reece James in, because I do just think he's going to continue to rise in ownership and price, and you'll get to a point where he's sort of 6.5 million, and then you'll say, maybe then I have missed the boat. But I still just think he's one of those players where he's going to perform really, really well this season. I think he'll hit 200 points, and no, I don't think you've missed the boat. The final question, or the tons of questions this week, was on captaincy. So bear with me, I'm going to try something different. I won't be able to do this every week, but I'm going to try and do a dedicated captaincy video. The reason for that is that I sometimes feel like I've got to rush my captaincy analysis, which I love doing into these videos. And I know it's some of your guys' favourite part of it, but I want to do defensive data, attacking data, underlying data, heat maps, touch maps. I want to go into it in more detail. So I'm going to try and do a video tomorrow, released on Friday. I'll try and get it out as early as possible. It'll probably be sort of midday, 3 p.m. time. British summertime, that is, or whatever time it is. It's GMT now. The clocks have changed. But UK time, it will be around between like 12 and 3. And I'm going to try and go into it in a lot of detail, because I know a lot of people are looking to captain someone other than Salah. So it'll probably be sort of a 15, 20 minute, maybe 25-minute video just on captaincy. So look out for that. I do think there are good options other than Salah, and I'm excited to record that. I'm going to do the research this evening on Thursday, make all the graphics, and that'll be coming out on Friday for you guys. So no captaincy in this video, but don't worry, it is definitely coming. So guys, there you have it. That is the Game Week 12 preview video done and finished. I really hoped you enjoyed it. As I said, I'm really going to strive to try and hit 10,000 subscribers before the start of 2022. It'd be a great way to bring in the new year. So if you're still watching now, you've watched a 40-odd minute video and you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do so. Also, to help me reach further people that might want to subscribe, you know you can like, comment, down below. That helps the algorithm. It pushes me out to other people as well. So if you're already subscribed and you're a supporter of the channel, what you can do is you can just like and comment, and that will help push me to other people, and that will hopefully help the subscriber count to tick along. As I said, tomorrow will be a captaincy video. Hopefully from next week, I'll be back streaming because I have made some improvements with the internet. There's still a few things we need to sort out, but hopefully now that the internet has improved, I'll be back to streaming, and that'll be really nice over the busy period when I can't get all these game week preview videos out and team selection videos. I can just drop an hour-long, 2-hour-long stream and I can answer some of your questions. So if you're looking forward to all that, make sure you subscribe, make sure you like and comment. Also, make sure to download OneFootball, link in the description. Thank you so much for watching. Catch you in tomorrow's captaincy video. Thank you so much, guys. Bye-bye.